Well, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Happy last Sunday of AAPI month, and happy Pentecost Sunday as well. And, oh yes, it's a holiday weekend too, so it's a three for today.
Carnival. Yeah.
Carnival happening down in the
Right
Mission
now.
too, yeah. Wanted to welcome our guest today, Reverend Norman Fong, who, if you're from San Francisco, is a well-known quantity.
It's not true.
But I wanted to, this has been about a year getting Norman here. Norman came to the Vine AAPI service, which was a midday service last year. And he told a bit of a story of his own background growing up here, and I thought it would be important for him to be here and heard at the 11 o'clock service as well. So I'm going to ask you in a few moments, Norman, to do a very un-Asian American thing. I'm going to be asking you questions about yourself. We want to hear your thoughts and
This
your
is being
story.
recorded?
It is, yeah, right there.
Oh, I got to be careful.
But before we begin there, I want to give you a brief biography here. First of all, my name is Greg Kimura. I'm the Vice Dean here, and I'm happy to welcome Chinatown Community Ambassador and lifelong activist, Reverend Norman Fong. Norman is the Parish Associate of the Presbyterian Church in Chinatown, which is the oldest Asian Pacific Islander parish in America. He was ordained as a Presbyterian Minister and has been serving his home church since 1981. He also served for the Chinatown Community Development Center for over 3 decades, including as its executive director, and since 2020 as its community ambassador.
I just retired April 1st.
You did?
Yes.
Something tells me you're one of those retirees who's just as busy or more busy during retirement, too. Born and raised in Chinatown, he continues to serve his home base and is doing justice, love, and kindness. And Norman is the recipient of the White House Champion of Change Award during the Obama administration, and currently he's part of the Coalition for Community Safety and Justice. I know you're also on the board of the Interfaith Council, too, and serving API victims of hate crimes in San Francisco. Thank you, Norman, for joining us today.
Thank you, Greg.
I thought we could maybe begin by having you, I know you're a second-generation Chinese-American, is that right?
Third generation.
Third generation. If maybe you can tell a little bit about your own family's immigration story.
Okay. Some stuff is secret. But I was just telling Dan over there, I think. It's a painful history of immigration. Even though my mom was born here in 1919, South Africa, she got beat up too. And she worked a number of jobs, a sewing factory first, and then she decided to help Chinatown by being a worker, sales worker at these shops in Chinatown, Grant Avenue. Sometimes some of the tourists are kind of crazy, so I remember she got beat up. But she was a person of deep faith. So and she grew up in an alleyway in Chinatown, Ross Alley, and we have a plaque there now. Us young kids decided to honor our parents by putting a plaque there. But that's another story. My grandma, she came at the turn of the century, I guess. And that history is really bad, but we shouldn't hide it. But, men were allowed in labor. My dad came in 1919 also as a farm worker first. But women were used and abused. And so our church worked created a community center tied to our church, Cameron House, down the block, Sacramento, and dealing with domestic violence and girls that were sold into prostitution. So that's a bad part of history, but it's there. And my dad and it's his birthday this month. My dad would be 118 now, but I loved him a lot, but he didn't talk much at all. He's the typical Chinese immigrant that doesn't talk to anybody. He told me, stay out of trouble, don't talk so much, and look, I'm talking right now. But, because he went through Angel Island, all the Chinese immigrants, well, I don't know why Chinese, but they threw him in Angel Island, and then he served as a war veteran, got picked on. Of course, the Chinese, being Chinese, he was made the cook. And so that's about it, quiet. At that time, he represented to me what people were saying is Chinese-American history, which is, I forgot his name, Gunther Bart, wrote a book called Bitter Strength. That's kind of like the history and theology for me of our story. It's kind of different in that way.
Bitter strength. Sort of the theology. Explain what you mean by that.
There's different styles to reacting to suffering. And it is through bitter strength that you can persevere and survive. So Chinatowns, we lost 200 Chinatowns. I don't know if you know the history here, but California Constitution, the second one, 1879, said you can remove Orientals and Chinese anywhere in California. And so we lost 200 Chinatowns. A lot of the wineries, agricultural work was actually done in the 1800s and by a lot of imported Chinese or coolie labor, which replaced slavery. And coolie means bitter strength.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's what there's a lot of, I don't know if this fits, but I'm going to do it now. There's a new book out written by the Concord Church in Japantown. And I just finished reading it this week. It's called Arigato. What's arigato mean? Thank you. But the two words, ari means to have, gato means difficulty. Same theme of the perseverance. Mm-hmm. And, in Chinese, the word for crisis is danger and opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that's affected my thinking on what is our strategy and how we serve God and make changes in the city from that perspective. So I don't know if that fits, but I hope you can resonate with some of that. But I think, and I'm saying stuff I haven't said anyway. I think that how it shapes my theology is that we're supposed to expect pain and suffering. And, like the kids, they want a Disneyland feel-good kind of church. And in reality, working for Chinatown all these years, it's been the suffering and perseverance that motivates me to keep on going. So I see the power of the Spirit on Pentecost, empowering. It's the power of the Spirit that keeps us, because we can't do it alone. My mom even now, this is the part I shouldn't say out loud. My mom said, she was a deeply devoted Cumberland Presbyterian all her life. And then one time I asked her, how do you keep going? All this stuff in Chinatown, and marriage. See, this is the part I shouldn't talk about, but what the heck? I don't know anyone here. Okay. My mom said, faith gave her the perseverance for marriage. And they made it through a lot of suffering. We grew up poor, right? My mom's sort of factory, and then my dad, farm worker, cook. Any restaurant in Chinatown, he was there, either janitoring or cooking in the back. That's all he did all their lives, 7 days a week. And the power of the Spirit is what gives us strength to hang in there longer than a lot of other folks might. Yeah.
Cornel West, the theologian, African-American theologian and philosopher, once called what you're talking about the Christian tragic view of life, which is redemption comes, but it comes through suffering.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that's a mature view of faith, and it is one that doesn't allow for what I've heard described as a cheap form of grace either. It comes at a cost.
That's good.
I just want to, I'm half Japanese, and so when you're saying these words and talking about these, there's a Japanese word, gaman, which is enduring suffering with dignity. Oh. And it's like also, it sounds to me like this, there are all these parallel kind of understandings across the Asian American experience too. I don't want to project this on the Chinese American experience.
No, that's good. I mean, I learned a lot. My mentor was Lloyd Wake at Glide Church. He worked there forever. He's not known as Cecil Wills, but I went on a trip with his son to the Philippines. It was a first time out of the country for me. We lived in Hong Kong, but we went to different places, Korea, and I was so impressed with the faith-based groups there making changes. So we talk about homeless here in San Francisco, ain't nothing compared to Manila. They got 1 million homeless in Zone 1 Tondo, and I met with the organizers there. And that's probably why I became more of an activist too. I just said, you gotta organize. So the homeless in Manila, 1 million, it's amazing. And in Hong Kong, they work, the Christian group there works with public housing there and run programs, schools and all that. All this stuff I took back, this was in 77 to 79, I lived in Hong Kong. And that changed me. But what a lot of the organizers say is, we don't need you missionaries here and all that. Organize in your own home community. That was the key. And I took it seriously and have been working in my church and community since then until this day. There's something about the use of the long-term mission, the kingdom of God, whatever you want to call it, that takes long-term commitment to make real change. So I just met my buddy who went with me to Hong Kong. His name's Steve Unruh. He's with the Trinity Presbyterian Church in North Carolina. And we haven't seen each other in a long time. And he said, Norman, I remember what you said. Stay in one community, you choose which one, and just keep being there, loving people, and going through struggles with the community. And in the end, you'll see the impact later. So now that I'm retired, I guess this is my retirement speech. I'm so thankful for millions of people and my home church that's joined our community in every struggle there is. So for those of you who don't know Chinatown, but I figure you do, you're just up the block. Half of Chinatown are single-room occupancy hotels. So that means a lot of the families and seniors are squeezed into an 8x10 room. They have to share the bathrooms and share the kitchen. And when SIP came, shelter in place 3 years ago, we were afraid all the seniors were going to die in Chinatown because of the COVID on it. But our community came together, and we've been delivering food so they don't have to share the kitchen. The bathrooms, we work with inspectors in the city to make sure they're monitored, all the buildings in Chinatown. And so we've actually had very low COVID because of all the people that got involved. Our church created the SRO pantry. So twice a week we deliver, we give food out in our church, and there's a long line out there.
I love your idea of being embedded rather than a social activist tourist, that you have to be part of the community. I want to bring this back. we want to still hear a little bit more about your growing up, and then we're going to talk about some of the activism that you've been involved in and growing today. You grew up, your mother was very pious, but you went through a little hellraiser. Actually,
you want me to confess now?
You maybe never even grew out of your hellraiser phase, but
Yeah,
it just transformed into something else. Tell us about Norman as a young man growing up in Chinatown.
I was the worst kid. I felt bad. I forgot to mention my mom's faith helped her to handle me. I don't know why I wasn't an activist. I was very active.
No, you were in a gang.
Yeah, I was. So, boy, where'd you find that? Oh,
everything's on the internet now,
oh
Norman.
man, there's so much interviews. See? So, I thought I was a good kid at first. And I went to Gene Parker Elementary on Broadway and Powell. That's my high school. At the time, all of us kids from Chinatown were placed there and another school, Commodore Stockton. So we all knew each other. We all grew up in Chinatown. So that's the good part. The bad part was I got picked on because I was Chinese. When I went to Francisco Junior High, I got beat up, and a few times I got tied to Salesian boys. They're supposed to be. Anyway, and they water balloon tortured me.
What do you mean? Okay, explain this. They tied you up
They tied me to the fence, and then they had backpacks of water balloons and started bashing me. I don't even know those guys. They were teenagers. But that incident changed me into a wild guy. I didn't cry. I just remember getting so mad. I'm going to fight back. And so I had to organize to protect our, it worked kind of. But I feel bad about the delinquent behavior that
let's
I
just
had.
explain. So even today, there are ethnic pockets, even within blocks of where we are now.
Right.
But there was a pretty bright division between Chinatown and North Beach, which was at the time ethnically, I know it's been gentrified and all that stuff, but
right.
ethnically Italian.
Right.
So that when you say Salesian boys, they were Italian-American kids attending the Salesian church.
And they were called, the gang itself was called DACs.
What does that mean?
Damn All Chinamen. They spray painted it all over the North Beach playground. And so we had to organize. So that's why I always say I wasn't bad just to be bad. It was more organizing to protect us kids. And so, but anyways, then I got older, and what redeems me is I also told the Italian club and the North Beach Chamber, you guys beat me up back then. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we got to do something about it. So I want a fair fight. And I told them, let's do the first ever Chinatown North Beach Noodle Fest. Chow mein versus spaghetti. Wonton versus ravioli. And it turned into something positive that
if you don't know, this is a sore spot in Asian America. Everyone thinks that pasta noodles were invented by Italians, but at least the Asians is the belief that Marco Polo took it back to Italy, and that this is a big deal. Throw down on the noodles. Huh?
Oh, it's so fun. I love it. It helps Chinatown and North Beach.
Yeah.
All the businesses, they love it. Oh, it's great. So turning despair into hope is the key theme of my life, too.
Do you still run into some of those kids who are mean to you today?
No, I don't know what they look like now. Uh-huh. I don't know if they come forward. I did it, confess. Okay, I forgive them all anyway. It made me stronger and helped me to deal with difficulties today. I'm so appreciative of my parents now and my grandparents, what they went through, and my other relatives who built the railroad. It was, like they say, standing on the shoulders of giants. They're the giants that created me. And I I'm so proud, I guess, of our church community who embraced linking together community and church as one. And I've always been that kind of a pastor, and I can't see anything without the community. And so the kingdom of God is not as dichotomized as we might think, especially on this Pentecost Sunday. But I do feel like the hope in the midst of despair, my phrase forever, is something that the kids and the next generation get. And so I want to brag on this API Heritage Month of what I got to do, and that's why I got the Obama Award. I got youth to care for the community. Our alleyways, all there, even I grew up with them, and when they had rats all over, people in restaurants would throw grease all over, and the city wouldn't clean it. And I didn't know that in San Francisco, there are alleyways and streets that are cleaned. Chinatown, in the master plan, left our alleyways out, so it was unfair. I worked at Chinatown CDC. I'm paying bills, electric bills, for lights in these 3 alleys. I go, why are we paying for it? The city didn't cover it. So then I can learn about and raise to another level of understanding what institutional, structural racism is. And wow, how can you ignore a whole community? But it wasn't. They said, the excuse was, they're not real streets. They're too narrow, right, the alleyways. But cars go through them. And, so that's another side of the story. I think when you talk about nowadays doing justice in the community and stopping racism, it's going to be harder and more long-term than you think. But these youth, so 1991 I started adopting alleyway youth. They started, I thought.
Wait. Adopting alleyway youth. What does this mean?
So AAA, Adopting Alleyway Youth, I started that program in 1991. I asked the kids, what do you hate about Chinatown? These are kids that live in Chinatown. We hate the alleyways because they stink and it's always illegal dumping. Even today, there's still some. So they started grading. They helped. I got a little funding from Neighborhood Beautification Fund. Too much detail. Anyway, and every Friday, the youth would walk through every alleyway, 41 alleyways, and they would grade them A to F. Okay. That was genius. Anyway, so we did it alongside of the Chinese newspaper and the San Francisco Independent. So it's posted there, conditions in Chinatown alleyways. All of a sudden, the city started caring a little bit more, and the businesses were more careful. And so the youth that got engaged went back to their schools and got all the Chinese clubs to come back to Chinatown to clean. They volunteered to clean it up. Next thing you know, it feels like a movement. And I met a student from UC Berkeley, her name's Jasmine Call, who wrote her thesis on Chinatown alleyways. And then we submitted the Chinatown alleyway plan to the city planning department to adopt. So we're one of the first neighborhoods that actually drew our own plans of how our alleyway should look and got the city to adopt it. And with that, another church member I won't name found that there was a little pot of funding in the DPW mitigation account. It's gas tax money, and then since we don't have cars in Chinatown, small ownership, we got that fund to help pay for some of the alleyway improvements. So we got some good alleyways now, and we're going to do more alleyway fairs. And our youth, starting this summer, are going to do in-person Chinatown alleyway tours again. And so that's going to be happening too. I hope y'all get folks to come. You can make a donation too. But anyway,
Okay, so
I'm jumping all over.
No. I love it because sometimes activism is this thing that's like let's go out and march or whatever. But what you're describing is a type of activism that's both, as you described, deeply embedded in a theology, embedded in a community, and is intergenerational in a way that many places would find difficult to develop. So here's another kind of generational thing. There is a lot of great energy going on for people outside the Chinese American community in Chinatown. Some of the best mural art seems to be in there. The Chinese Historical Society, I walked by there a couple months ago, had all these little posters for I Am Bruce.
Yeah.
Whose face did I see on one of these posters says I Am Bruce Lee for the exhibit that they had at the CHA.
It's embarrassing.
What is it? I've got to ask this because this is, there have been ESPN 30 by 30s done on the meaning of Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee has a particular resonance in the Chinese American community. Can you tell me, when you say I am Bruce Lee, what that means to you?
Well, they picked me because on the poster, because my name is the same as Bruce Lee. I probably got it from, my Chinese name is Little Dragon, okay? But I got it for a different reason. Even though I'm proud to be the same name as Bruce Lee, I'm a twin. So in Chinese, when you have twins, my twin sister's name is Little Phoenix, and I'm Little Dragon. You go into any Chinese restaurant, you'll see wedding banquets, the two together. So that's the reason I got my name. But Bruce Lee made us proud in the 60s going to high school. It was like a lot of other groups looked down on the Chinese as very weak and easy to pick on, all that, right? There's Bruce Lee, and he crossed so many bridges with the African American community and other groups. One time, this is a fun one. One time, this has nothing to do with activism, but one time when I wanted, I think Princeton Seminary, they wanted to recruit somebody from Chinatown, and they sent us to look at Princeton, and we wanted to see what's the seminary in New York.
Union,
yeah. And so I went there, and I was supposed to meet people there, and I'm on Times Square in the subway, and it looked like four tough-looking guys who were black, right? And one guy, I remember, just had the pink high heels. I don't understand. But anyway, and then they looked at me, and I didn't know what to do. So I got up, and he says, "You know any of that Bruce Lee Kung Fu stuff?" And I looked at them, and I just said, "Yeah, I do, And then, but I don't know enough to take on all four of you." And then they busted out laughing. But there was, we got kind of respect and mutuality that I felt at the moment. And anyway, I ended up going not to New York. I went to Princeton Seminary. But here's some bad news. And since we're dealing with race and culture, I worked 3 jobs. I was on a work study program. And I didn't know. This is back in '74. Princeton didn't consider Chinese as a minority. So Latinos, blacks, all that. Because I finally got it they changed it the year I left. I said, I'm not going to graduate from Princeton. I was chair of the Social Action Committee and did a lot of good work, human rights work globally. And then Jim McCord, the president, said, please graduate from Princeton. This is in San Francisco. He came. I said, no. No, I don't want. I want to graduate from San Francisco Theological Seminary. So I graduated in 1980, right from here. But at that moment, I felt like, what's my story? Do I want to be a Princeton grad? Or I want to be a grassroots community? Again, it's a choice. So I chose to be the grassroots person with our community. And Princeton taught me that, oh my God, there's images of like the Chinese don't suffer or Asian API communities doesn't have problems, the model minority myth, all that stuff. I was a victim of it. So I worked in a prison, a church, and cook in the kitchen. So I go, man, why am I working so hard? I mean, I know.
So 3 generations been of your family trying to get you out of the kitchen, right?
That's funny. I don't know if this is helpful, but hopefully I'll get it more together for my sermon at 11 o'clock.
You know what? Here's what you need to do for your sermon. You do anything you want. But you know, your story that you told, and I don't want to step on toes if you're going to be talking about this later, but your story where you said, you are beautiful.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to start off with that.
Okay, then I'm not going to say anymore. From the AAPI service last year, I thought was, you know what?
Yeah.
I said, has Norman ever been here to preach at 11? No. We tried for a year to get you. 2 times it fell through. And you know, I think it was meant to be for you to be here on one of the big holy days of the year.
Yeah, Pentecost is the right one. Oh, I love it.
I'm so thrilled because you should be someone who's in the pulpit here telling your story. It's important.
Well, your story, too.
I've preached that here before, so, you know.
Lloyd Waukee, Reverend Lloyd Waukee, who was my mentor, he preached at my ordination in 1981. He goes, no, Norman's not a Presbyterian. No. He's a good United Methodist, because he believes for some pastors, the church is their whole world. But for the new Reverend Norman Fong, that's what he said in my own church, the whole world is the church. And that's what Glide is. You know, I've preached at Glide a lot. But beyond the talking, it's the movement of the Spirit. I've seen it work. Maybe sometimes through me or others, but we've integrated faith in action. Our church is famous for it in Chinatown. We built a housing project. And then my other work, we took over public housing because the government can't run it. They don't have no love. And so sorry, I shouldn't say that.
No, that's important. What do you mean by that?
So where I worked, Chinatown CDC, we took over public housing, thanks to Ed Lee, who was mayor, passed away. But HUD had a program. They wanted to get rid of public housing across the nation because it's hotbeds for crime and drugs and all that. When we run it, it's super loving care for the residents. And they're poor and they need housing and it's too expensive here. So we saved 438 units of senior and public housing. And that's a quiet story that people don't know about. And then the dealing with homelessness. I'm so proud. We're not, well, I shouldn't say that in the news, but made friends with Swords to Plowshare, Michael Becker. Anyway, they're good at taking care of homeless veterans in San Francisco. They know them all. They decided to partner with us. Chinatown, I don't know why, Chinatown Housing. And we said, okay, we'll do it with you. We'll build the housing, but you handle the residents because we can't deal with mental health issues, vets and all that. And we have built 3 projects now. The new one is at Treasure Island. So thousands of vets, just one small segment of the homeless problem in San Francisco we're addressing. And I think there's a couple hundred more, they said. We got to build some more. But we can't serve everybody. But veterans shouldn't be on the streets of San Francisco, right? And so we found a united mission. And this is an example of partnerships. And I think I've changed.
Explain what you, whether it's with the SROs and the housing in Chinatown or the vets in Treasure Island. You said you do it with love. And what do you mean by that?
I mean, one of the problems of the movement of the 60s, of CDCs, they're called Community Development Corporations. Part of the war on poverty across the nation was trying to get people to build housing, just like we're going through now. But a lot of the problems are that people find it financially pretty good to build housing. So a lot of these housing groups, which began as a mission to serve the poor and it's a mission-driven thing, have changed. So there's a lot of different market rate housing and other groups around. We are committed to serving the poor. We are part of that movement, original movement, like Pentecost, anyway, that organized for the purpose of the people and building community. It's not about just housing. And until we understand that, folks, we're not going to get that far. So that love, and because I'm a minister too, and they know I'm part of the church, I get to love the families and all the fights too with the people, and I love it. I'm tired though; it gets very tiring. But that's like the original church to me.
I love it. I love it. I want to ask you two more questions, and then we'll open it up to other questions here, and then we'll let you get ready for 11 o'clock. But you grew up at Clay and what was the intersection? Clay Street and down in Chinatown?
Well, Clay and Stockton is where the church is.
Okay. Oh, that's where the church is.
Yeah, our Presbyterian Church is on. And I'm proud of our church. Even in the beginning, it started because the Chinese were not allowed to go use hospitals and get medical care. So, in fact, the Chinese hospital today is the only independent hospital in San Francisco.
Wow.
All of them got control. Again, it's like the hospitals and housing, and it's become lucrative, I guess.
Okay, so
it's kind of crazy.
So
but
you grew up but in Chinatown, just a handful of blocks away from Grace Episcopal Church.
Yeah, that's true.
Growing up, now we hear.
Oh, don't get me in trouble now.
Oh no! This is, people need to hear this too. Like, what did Grace represent to you? I mean, we like to think of our progressive history and everything, but what was Grace like for you?
You're gonna get me in trouble. Well, Grace Cathedral was the prestigious church of San Francisco. All the big shots, probably Obama, Clinton, everybody came through here, and which is good and bad. But it also was seen as Nob Hillish, with the history of all the railroad owners and big shots, so who imported the Chinese to serve on the railroad and all kinds of things. So I have mixed emotions. And getting to know your congregation more, I'm impressed. And actually, you have more clout than anybody. If you all chose, the mayor would listen to you guys more than my church. So what you do with the history and prestige that you get more than any of the church that I know of is important.
Did you find it a welcoming place for Chinese Americans to come to?
Oh,
growing up?
Last year? Oh, no, growing up, nah.
Okay, all right.
No way, we don't go up the hill, come on. But overall, I mean, you have a great history and all that. But
okay, all right. I want to get back to talking about you.
Yeah, don't get me in trouble.
I'm not. It's good to hear, because sometimes if you're inside a bubble or a group, you don't understand what the experience is for those who are outside looking in, or what vibes are given off, and that's something.
It was positive now.
I want to ask you about your rock band and your music and the role that has played in your life. Because that was an entree to bring things into and to experience outside of the community too, right?
Yeah. Well, because of the 60s experience and the Italians in Broadway and on not allowing or being welcoming to especially the Chinese community, in 68, one of our great friends was being drafted to Vietnam, and we wanted to throw a party to just to give him strength and all that. After that, we decided to keep going, and we played for other events for our friends, communities, and then something happened in '69 that really pushed us. Ethnic studies, SF State, and all of a sudden there's these Asian American clubs.
San Francisco State was the first university in America to create an ethnic studies program.
And I was there at the protest too with Reverend Waukee. I was like the new kid. He just dragged me there. Anyway, but then we have all over California, all these universities and city colleges, the Asian American Studies clubs wanted us to play. And we've been playing ever since. So since '68, but what we play is not Chinese music. We play pop, Motown, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Santana, of course. And so we're cheap and affordable, so everybody hires us, man. But so we're still playing. We play for the parade and street fair, Chinese New Year street fair every year since 1991. And I've been MC for the parade since then. But I'm retired. I want the next generation to take over.
What do you play?
Sax and I sing.
Okay. Do we have any? Oh, we do have some questions here.
Oh.
All right.
You guys are going to get bored. You're going to hear me again at 11? Oh, man.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Norman. Congregates at Calvary. Sonia, Paul G., Alvin, Anna Wee. Please, wonderful Reverend Norman, tell us a few stories of people like these in Mildred Lee and their service with faith.
What? Sonia, Paul G., the Huey family. Okay. Mildred Lee.
I'll tell you what, we'll skip that one.
Yeah,
We'll go on to
I
the
can't
question.
picture Mildred. I'm getting old, man. I'm getting Alzheimer's.
So I know that
She's a member of this congregation.
No, Cameron House.
Oh, Cameron House,
Yeah,
Mildred
they're
Lee.
all involved Cameron House.
Oh, yeah.
Calvary members too.
Oh, I see. Well, I didn't know, so that's good. I know the members of our church did the lion dance for you.
Oh, that was for your
Yeah,
church group. Okay,
that,
wonderful.
Cameron House folks. No, I think the more collaborativeness we create, whether it's with Cameron House or our church, that's what I would throw back on you all on this API heritage. You got the question, yeah, I got the
Okay.
So how do we feel about coming up the hill? It was a high hill. But but anyway, is there more stuff we can do together? And with your clout, so think about that. And that may be a new way to go. I did not mention, Cameron House deals with the domestic violence issue very much. And actually at Cameron House, I worked there for 11 years. And when I learned that's where I came to faith, made me want to think of being a pastor. Because number one, I thought all churches on earth build housing. Because we fought for housing. Number two, I got evicted from my housing on Powell Street. And guess who helped? Cameron House. They found some nice lady who, that's a crazy story, I forgot. I got evicted by a Chinese owner from Taiwan But the affordable housing I got was $90 a rent for over a decade with my whole family. Was Italian. And my mom told me right after the incident where I got beat up, because life is about balance, Norman. That's what I said before.
Okay, all right, life is balance.
No.
Say that again.
Yeah, I think,
You got evicted by the Taiwanese landlord, but the Italian-American landlord is the one that...
was giving us cheap rent forever. $90, man, for a 3-bedroom apartment that we put, okay, maybe more than my family. But anyway, it was jam-packed. But that illustration really brought my faith into question of denying racism or fighting it, because you got to look at people differently. And that has also been part of my work. In 2010, there was a lot of beatings, Asian hate in the Bayview. And I had to do a funeral. An 89-year-old pushed off the 3rd Street light rail. I don't know if any of you guys were around and remember that. And then a Chinese woman was pushed off the 3rd Street light. And we wanted to stop the hate. And then I found out there was a gang that was punching seniors, Oakland, Chinatown, and our Bayview. And this is 2010. So what we did right after that is, and we've been doing it every year, Black Asian Solidarity. We celebrate Lunar New Year with Black History Month every year in the Bayview. It's great solidarity. And the best solidarity is Reverend Jesse Jackson for me, who flew out last year. I called him, and he came to join us to commemorate George Floyd, along with the killing of an Asian American named Vincent Chin. You know that story, right?
They don't, though.
Yeah, I mean, he was a baseball batted to death in Detroit,
in the early 80s, he was
82,
he was beaten to death, mistakenly a Chinese American beaten to death
for being Japanese.
Yeah, for being Japanese in Detroit during the whole automobile thing.
Yeah.
The people who killed Vincent Chin basically got off. And
Free.
it became a kind of a cause celeb of like a before and after in the Asian American seeking justice movement.
Yeah, and so we needed Reverend Jackson's help, and I never forgot it. He came to Cameron House and our church in '83, I think, or '84, and then last year was the 40th anniversary of it, and so he came and we did an event there, and then I had to do the funerals remembrance service in Detroit, so they flew me out there too. So, but that solidarity we needed to hear in the Chinese papers, because there was this growing rift between blacks and Asians, because it looks like, if you look at the media, they're beating the heck out of our seniors. So you got to do something.
So
hey, is that Norman Toy back there? All right.
So this is a good maybe endpoint. We are experiencing in the last 3 or 4 years a spike in anti-Asian violence, especially in the Bay Area. And what do you think we can do to ameliorate or help out with that? Because some of that is black and Asian violence, but a lot of it is just there seems to be, with the previous president, an anti-Chinese and anti-Asian sentiment in general, which seems to give license to some of this violence too.
Yeah.
How can we help to fix it? What can people do?
So I'm with that coalition for community safety and justice that we created in Chinatown, uniting a lot of us. I think we've dealt with at least 180 Chinese-speaking victims already. So there's a fund out there that under the Community Youth Center that you can support. But it's bigger than that. How do we change hearts and minds and souls? And I know our presbytery and our church nationally has asked every congregation to study church school, Asian American history. What they said, no, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander history. Now that's the first time ever that we passed a General Assembly rule to force or ask kind of that church to study about it, not just talk about it. So that's one thing. The other thing is the National Presbyterians have adopted a Matthew 25 thing across the country. 3 things you got to do. Study the history and structure of racism, address economic poverty in the communities that need, and 3, somehow it relates to congregational vitality. Get them youth back here, you know. So there's a national movement in our denomination. I don't know Episcopal, but you guys could lead the way anywhere. So that's going on. So we got to get more ethnic studies in schools, because I think people don't know. You know,
Even basic things like
basic things. They don't know the history. I mean, like
Asians could not become naturalized citizens until, well, initially 52 with the McCarran Act, and then 65 in reality as well.
Right, in reality.
I mean, Asians could not become naturalized citizens in 1965.
Yeah, at Cameron House, we helped do a program and we walk with them to get the citizenship. So, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
There's too much stuff here.
It is, but Norman, thank you for being part of the forum this morning and sharing your story, and we are delighted to have you here. This won't be the last time, and we are especially delighted to have you preaching from that pulpit where Martin Luther King Jr. preached.
Whoa.
No,
Hey,
no
Toy.
stress.
Hey, Toy, make sure you take a picture of me up there. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman.
All right, thank you.